Alright everybody, it's been 3 billion weeks since my last video. I wanted to make videos on the events that happened during between this video and the last one, but they're all over since then. Yeah, I wanted to make a video on Art of Mercy, but I got lazy and I didn't finish it. So here we go for another main quest video, chapters 1 through 4. Also the introduction. Yeah. Okay. Let's start. Let's go. So as I explained in my last video, the main story starts with Gran or Jida. I'll refer to the main character from now on as Gran. He receives a letter from his father to come find him in Estalucia, the skydom where the Astrals were born. Gran and his pet dragon V, or Vern, depends on who you ask. I'll call him V because that's the Japanese original name. So Gran and V plan to leave right away from Zingenstill, where they lived all their lives. V is a little bit reluctant at first, and for good reason, you know, they lived there since they were kids. And the Estalucia is all the way over at the end of the sky, basically on the other side of the world. And also you need a sky map to get there. So, you know, it's not gonna be an easy task. By the way, important key information here, V has amnesia. He doesn't remember much before Gran was born, I think. So basically all he knows is Zingenstill, nothing else. The sky map is a map that has its pieces scattered all over the islands in Fantangrand, and it allows you to cross the Grim Basin. This Grim Basin separates different skydoms, as I explained in the last video, and it's the only way that we know of to get to Estalucia. My theory is that when the Astrals retreated back to Estalucia, they left the sky pieces there. Some were given to some people or guarded by some entities. In particular, most of the sky pieces are guarded by primal beasts in different islands. Some are guarded by organizations or people, but that only comes into play a bit later. So back to the story, V and Gran are about to set off when a huge battleship shows up over the island. Now this is a bit weird since Zingenstill is a pretty quiet island. There's not a lot of people there. Gran also notices something falling off the ship, so the pair goes to investigate, and they bump into a blue-haired girl called Lyria, or Ruria, if you go by the Japanese standard. After this girl is a whole platoon of guards that hail from the Earth Empire. And it is explained that the Earth Empire lately has been conquering islands after islands with their huge military might. They basically have conquered most of Fantangrand, or at least have some power over it. So they're a really strong empire as of now. The guards urge Gran to hand Lyria over, but he refuses, so the guards attack him. Gran manages to drive the guards back somewhat, but someone comes in and defeats them all. This person being a defector from Earth, so an ex-Earth soldier, and her name is Catalina. As of now, she's in charge of protecting Lyria. So as they were taking some time to rest and introduce themselves, a man named Captain Pommern shows up. Catalina tries to convince Pommern that she's on their side and that she will return Lyria to the battleship, but Pommern knows that she's lying and she defected, and she was the one that helped Lyria escape from the battleship in the first place. Captain Pommern reveals that Lyria is the only person in the world that can control primal beasts other than the Astrals. So she's not an Astral, but she can control and command primal beasts. And she was hidden by the Earth Empire so that they could use her as a weapon. Of course, Catalina is against this use of her as a weapon because primal beasts are incredibly dangerous and could result in the death of millions as it has during the war. So, as you do, in response to Catalina's objection, Palmer decides to release a Hydra on them. For the Empire, I guess. The Hydra literally kills Gran. Or at least severely injures him, to the point that he will die very soon. But before he does, Lyria lends her power to him, which means she literally links her life to Gran's life, essentially binding their lives together forever. This explains why Gran and Lyria are called the Singularity in some events, because they are now essentially the same life form. Different people, but if one dies, the other one dies as well. After this, in order to defeat the Hydra, Lyria calls on to Bahamut. If you watched the last video, Bahamut is one of the gods of this world. So yeah, Lyria literally calls on to God to obliterate the Hydra, and he does. He literally obliterates him in a single blow. So having defeated the Hydra, the gang runs away. They stop to rest a bit farther away, and Lyria starts pointing out that Bahamut really didn't listen to her, but instead came of his own volition to protect Gran and lend him his strength. This is really odd, you know, because normally when you call on to half of God, he usually doesn't come, especially not for an insignificant little kid like Gran. But you know, the scene was pretty dope. Obviously, this is foreshadowing. Lyria and Gran have a bonding moment over the fact that they have their lives linked to each other in order to save Gran's life. But before long, they are spotted by Imperial soldiers once again, so everyone joins in on beating some Imperial ass. Having defeated once again the soldiers, Catalina suggests leaving the island, which is pretty spot on since Gran and V wanted to leave anyways. The Empire just made the whole process a lot faster. Oh yeah, Catalina reveals her scaly tendencies on this screenshot right here. Jokes aside, this is a pretty important step to Gran, since it's the first one he takes to making the huge crew he will have in the future. So with all that hope gathered for the future and all his dreams, they venture forth into a ship and get the fuck out of Zinkenstill. They board onto the small stolen Imperial ship and set sail towards the skies. Catalina sets the tasks in order as well. In order to get to Lucia, they need to get through the Grim Basin first. The big misty thing that separates the Skydoms and stuff that I explained in the last video. The quest for Gran's father ain't gonna be an easy one, and they all know that, but they don't care. They know they'll be able to do it. So that was the introduction to the series. From now on we'll cover the first island, or first archipelago actually, Port Breeze. Since each island will be a little longer to cover, we'll do one episode or one video per island. We also need to cover up until more or less the 4th or 5th island, until we get to the really juicy stuff. That's where more or less the bigger arcs come into play, and we get to know a little more about the world. Until then, I can make some videos on smaller introductory events like Blade of the Young Champion and the Cowardly Hero and the Captive Princess, which are really basic events, but they play an important role in later events like What Makes the Sky Blue, which is the main big event. So without any further ado, let's get into the main story of Granblue Fantasy. So where the introduction left off, the crew just boarded the ship and set sail towards the end of the sky. But what at least 3 of them didn't know is that Catalina is a terrible pilot. So not long after they departed, they crash landed on Eingana, the main island of Port Breeze archipelago. They all survived, thankfully, and near the wreckage, a very handsome man approaches the gang. He starts criticizing the crew for destroying the ship. He asks if they're a new crew. V likes the sound of all of them being a crew, so that's where they officially become a crew. V also reveals that Gran's dad also had a crew. That will come into play later, so keep that in mind. The dude is all like, yeah, good luck getting to whatever you're going without a pilot, cause I can see whoever piloted this motherfucker clearly didn't know how to do it, and then he just leaves. The crew heads into town to find supplies, which should be pretty simple since this island, Eingana, is the main island of Port Breeze archipelago, and it does a lot of trading between islands. So whatever they're looking for, it's probably here. As Catalina previously said, to reach Esalucia, we need to get out of this skydome. And to get out of this skydome, we need to go through the Grim Basin. And to go through the Grim Basin, you need a couple of things. First of all, you need the sky map to guide you there. And then you obviously need a ship. And with that ship, you obviously need a helmsman or a pilot. In town, Gran and the crew stop by the Knick-Knack Shack, a shop with all sorts of things. The owner is a Harvan called Sierocarte. Sierocarte also gives jobs and quests to Skyfarers. Everybody in the area knows her. In the game, Sierocarte and her shop, they're the main shop for trading items and buying supplies and all sorts of things. So she's pretty important in the game. The crew asks Siero where they can find a helmsman, but as it seems, since it's peak season now, everyone is already taken. Except for one person, some villagers who were eavesdropping say. This certain someone has given up on piloting ships. I wonder who it is. So they set out to find this guy called Rakam. He has supposedly given up piloting ships, but the crew wants to get him to pilot their ship to the other side of the world, which is a tough task. He's up in the outskirts of town, lazing around some kind of airship. Specifically, he's somewhere around the highlands, where the crew crashed their ship. They managed to find the airship. It's huge, like really big, but it looks like it also crashed, and has been there for a long time. Analyzing the ship, Catalina notices that some Earth Empire soldiers are around it. They hide, since if they're found by the Empire, they'll be pretty much killed on the spot. A Harvan seems to be leading the pack. His name is General Furious. Not Furious, Furious. And they're here because Port Breeze is known for resisting the Empire, and there is rumors that there are conspirators hiding there. Furious is cold-blooded and psychotic. He threatens his soldier with torture or death if they show any insolence. In fact, the whole battalion is ready to blow up the town. Before they do, Catalina stops them. She's had enough with the Empire's cruel deeds, but in the process, she ends up revealing everyone's hiding spot. The soldiers immediately recognize the gang as the fugitives from Zinkenstill, and they start chasing them. The crew runs away, but they end up running back to the airship, hoping they could maybe escape on it. But General Furious is still there with two new buddies, two mercenaries. They will become relevant later on, and they are two of my favorite characters in the game. Furious orders the soldiers to burn the ship to the ground so they can't escape. But before he does, the dude from the crash site straight up shoots him. The soldiers try to arrest him, but he and the crew run away once again. This time, the guards are able to catch up to them, but the mysterious fellow leads the crew to a secret hideout. After a while, the guards leave. Catalina thanks the man for saving them, and he introduces himself. His name is Rakam. He is the pilot they were searching for all this time. Shocker. The crew tells Rakam their story, and how they ended up crash landing in Port Breeze. and they ask Rakam if he'll be their pilot. He refuses, saying he has given up on piloting and he'll never do it again, of course, hiding his true feelings. The scene cuts to an Imperial ship, where General Furious is getting treated for his injuries. Besides him are the two mercenaries. Both of them argue for a little bit, but decide to track down the crew, since they're getting paid to do just that. Back at the hideout, the crew questions Rakam as to why he stopped piloting. He starts explaining that the ship we saw previously was his. He crashed it there a long time ago. He tried fixing it, he did everything he could, but the ship did not fly again. He didn't really understand why he crashed it. He spent all his life studying to become a pilot. He hired an expert technician, and yet it crashed. So, he just gave up on flying, feeling betrayed by the sky. He ends the conversation there, saying they should go warn the town that the Empire is trying to blow them up. So they leave. When they reach the town outskirts, Rakam bids farewell, saying he's helped them enough, that he has no interest in fighting the Empire. He doesn't want to die for that cause. The only thing he really cares about is what's dear to him, his ship, the Grand Cipher. Catalina gets pretty angry at his words and tries to convince him to fight against the Empire, but he doesn't listen and he ends up leaving. After he leaves, they are soon approached by the two mercenaries. They introduce themselves. The blue-haired Erun is Drang and the red-haired Draf is Sturm. They urge us to not warn the town of the Empire's assault, as it'll be much easier, and as soon as they came, they left the scene, leaving the crew very confused. They keep walking towards the town. V complains about the huge quantity of monsters all over the place, which you fight at the end of each chapter. Catalina explains that the Grim Basin is responsible to sending monsters into a frenzy, but no one really knows as to why so many have appeared over these last years. They're almost into town when the two mercenaries show up again. This time, they want to make a trade. They caught Rakam trying to sneak into town, so the deal is, they spare his life and give him a small ship to get out of Port Reese, and the villagers die, or they'll die with them. Of course, the crew refuses to both answers, so they beat the shit out of Drang and Sturm's soldiers that were with them. But meanwhile, two soldiers take Rakam away once more. Sturm tries to kidnap Lyria when a gunshot is heard. Out comes Rakam, having defeated the guards that took him away. Catalina is happy that Rakam didn't leave them behind in his escape. Rakam responds that he was touched by Catalina's speech earlier, and he joins the crew to beat some Imperial ass. They manage to defeat Drang and Sturm, but they end up sparing them, and both of them flee. Once more, wanting to save the town from the Empire, the crew sets out once more. Back at the Imperial warship, the mercenaries get chewed out by General Furious for their defeat. He orders them executed, but a soldier stops him. They're under the command of the Black Knight, and punishing them would be a bad idea. He relents and gets back to planning his attack on the town. Gran and the crew finally reach the town. It's pouring rain, which is irregular since it was clear just a moment ago. But even in a storm like this, they have to escape somehow. But how? Someone points out that there is an escape ship, but as we've seen previously, there are no pilots around. Except for one. Rakam tries to make some excuses like, "Oh, I crashed the Grand Cipher, don't you remember? I can't pilot a ship at all, especially not during a storm." That's when someone literally smacks him in the face. Not even joking. Everyone seems to trust Rakam's skill. After all, he's their only hope of getting out of there. So Rakam listens to them, and he regains his confidence, and he decides to pilot the ship again. On their way to the ship, Rakam and the crew discuss the storm. It's very strange since it's quite rare for Port Reese to have a storm like this. V brings up the guardian of the island that Rakam mentioned earlier. Rakam begins to explain that the island is guarded by Tiamat, and all of the winds that blow on the island are the breath of Tiamat. It's a primal beast, a remnant of the war. Lyria can sense her presence. The astral power is coursing through the wind. The storm grows, but everyone is able to reach the valley where the escape ship is located. Everyone is ready to board, but Rakam hesitates. In his hesitation, a familiar pesky little Harvin shows up. It's General Furious and his goons. The crew keeps them at bay, but it's getting difficult to keep up. That's when, before anyone is able to board, the ship explodes. The Imperial goons sabotage their ship. Now they have nowhere to escape. General Furious ends up revealing that they sent Tiamat, the guardian primal beast, into a frenzy, explaining the existence of a storm this size. If the storm is strong enough, then the archipelago won't be able to hold, and it'll be destroyed, and it'll plunge to the bottom of the skies. They're surrounded by soldiers, ordered to shoot any ship leaving, and with nowhere to run, the situation looks pretty doomed. The crew fights off some of the soldiers and run away with the people. They move back into the town. The gang tries to come up with a plan to solve this whole situation. Rackham feels guilty over not boarding the ship immediately. If he had, maybe they would have escaped. Everyone is kind of beating themselves up over what they can do and how hopeless the situation is, but Lyria reminds them that she is able to command primal beasts. With her help, they'll be able to stop Tiamat's frenzy and return everything to normalcy. Lyria leads the crew towards Tiamat, sensing the beast with her power. They encounter some soldiers and monsters along the way, but more importantly, Drang and Sturm. This time the two goofballs didn't come to fight, but to return their mercy back when they were defeated, so they suggest the crew come with them and escape on an Imperial ship, to which the crew refuses, saying they have to save the innocent lives of the townsfolk. Sturm tells them that they're fools, but Drang replies that deep down she likes the type of people who do that. Sturm stabs Drang, so he shuts up. This is kind of a recurring gag between the two of them. The pair leaves and our boys keep pushing forward, fighting more monsters, frenzied by the storm. Lyria finally finds where Tiamat's presence feels the strongest, but the only thing they see is the Grand Cipher. When they check their surroundings, they see that General Furious and, of course, his buddies are still there, and they're obviously ticked off that they're still struggling against them. The crew blames him for Tiamat's frenzy, but Furious says he was just a final straw. Tiamat was already on the brink of frenzy before he came. Everyone was reaping the rewards of clear skies and bountiful winds, but all of that came with a price to Tiamat. And when the Empire arrived on the archipelago, Tiamat was sent into a frenzy. Furious laughs at them and tells them he will escape on a ship and leave them there, to which Rackham shoots him again. Pretty funny. The crew takes care of the Imperial soldiers that are around the Grand Cipher. Then, they try to search around the ship. They can find Tiamat. Lyria suggests that maybe Tiamat is up in the sky. But how will they reach her if she's all the way up there? Well, there's a ship right next to them, the Grand Cipher, and Rackham has got his groove back, so they have a chance. Rackham grips the helm tightly and whispering some words to the ship. This will make sense later. The ship starts moving. Destination? Tiamat. They reach where Tiamat is, and her sheer presence is very intimidating to them. Lyria doubts her power is enough to calm her down, unless, that is, the rest of the team help. Rackham leads the pack and starts talking to Tiamat, thanking her for everything she gave to the people, and apologizing she never got any gratitude out of the people for that. And with that, the crew starts fighting Tiamat. They manage to restrain her, and Lyria is able to absorb her overflowing energy, successfully calming her down, and the sky begins to clear. Lyria also notices that she has something in her hand. It's a piece of the sky map, just like Gran's father had one. By absorbing Tiamat's power, they were able to get a piece. Pretty cool. The town is saved, and the ship is finally up in the skies. The crew is also ready to take off to anywhere. But before they do, Sierra Carta delivers a letter to Gran, sent in by a suspicious duo, saying they had to return some sort of favor. The letter is short, only saying, go to Vault's Duchy. The Vault's Duchy is a draft island known for the steel industry. It's nearby, so they're pretty curious as to what the whole thing is. So they set course to the island and leave Port Breeze. The scene cuts to the Imperial warship once again. Sturm is talking to a figure, clad in black armor. She reports that she successfully delivered the letter to Sierra Carta from the Knickknack Shack, and Drang reports that his dark essence seems to be doing progress towards something we don't really know yet, all going according to plan. Then, the figure says the following. The scene then fades to black. Well, that concludes the first island, the Port Breeze Archipelago. We just covered the first 4 chapters and the introduction. I hope y'all liked this video. Don't know what I'll cover next, so you can suggest something in the comments down below. Maybe I'll continue the main plotline, maybe I'll do a video on an upcoming event, if you so please. I wanted to cover the most recent event, Art of Mercy, but I had so much stuff to do, meaning I was lazy, that I couldn't make the script in time, meaning I didn't actually finish the event. So I guess I'll have to wait for a rerun. Until then, I already said we could do a video on smaller events that don't need a lot of lore to understand. But with that said, hope y'all enjoyed this video. Leave suggestions down below and see ya.